It had been raining that night, the kind of rain that drowns every sound except the heartbeat you're trying to ignore. Isabella had never planned to give herself to anyone, but something about him, the older, quiet man with storm-colored eyes, made her heart race and her voice vanish. He spoke little, touched gently, and left her trembling in ways she had never known. His name was Julian Cole, a billionaire investor known for being untouchable and cold, except with her. That night, in a luxury suite lit only by candlelight, and regret he took what she had never given another. And then, by morning, he was gone. No goodbye, no note, just the distant echo of her own innocence and the sound of the door closing behind him. Isabella searched for him, called the number he gave, went to the address he mentioned, even waited in front of the hotel where it all began. But Julian Cole had disappeared like a ghost, leaving her alone with questions that never stopped screaming inside her. And then came the second blow. She found out she was pregnant. At 19, with no support and no trace of the father, she made the decision to keep the child and never speak his name again. For 5 years, she raised her son in silence, working double shifts at a bookstore cafe while taking online classes at night. Every time she looked into those ocean-gray eyes, she saw the man who'd vanished and the boy who deserved more. Her son never asked about his father, and Isabella had no answers that wouldn't reopen wounds. It was just another busy Friday afternoon when he walked into the bookstore cafe, tall, confident, younger, but with eyes that stopped her heart. He ordered black coffee and sat with a law textbook, but glanced at her every time she passed. Something about him felt hauntingly familiar. His jawline, his posture, even the slight tilt of his head. It was like looking at a softer version of a ghost. "Do I know you?" he asked when she accidentally dropped a cup near his table. Isabella froze. "I don't think so," she whispered, but her hands were already shaking. She didn't know who he was yet, but she felt who he might be. He returned every afternoon, always to her cafe, always at the same table. On the fourth day, he smiled and finally said, "I'm Adrian. Adrian Cole." The world around her tilted. Cole. The name stabbed through time like lightning, and her legs nearly gave out. "Nice to meet you," she said quickly, forcing a smile while her mind screamed. He looked so much like Julian, but warmer, kinder, less haunted. "You okay?" he asked, gently. She nodded, but her entire soul was collapsing under a truth she hadn't even confirmed yet. That night, she sat beside her sleeping son and studied his face again, his lashes, his lips, the shape of his chin. She opened her laptop and searched, Adrian Cole, son of Julian Cole, and there it was, his name, his face, and a recent interview where he praised his father's business legacy. Her hands shook so violently she had to close the screen. He was Julian's son, which meant Adrian had no idea that the woman making his coffee had once loved and been abandoned by his father, or that the child she raised carried his own blood. And now, somehow, he was falling into her life like fate, rewriting the ending. Adrian wasn't like his father. He didn't flirt with money or power. He noticed small things, the way she tied her apron, how she always added one extra sugar cube when someone looked tired, how her laugh sounded tired even when she smiled. "You seem familiar," he said one evening, lingering after the cafe closed. Isabella pretended not to hear. "I just have one of those faces," she said softly, but inside her heart was a war, because every day he got closer, she felt like the truth was closing in too. Adrian arrived early that Saturday, just as Isabella's son Luca ran into the cafe carrying a book. "Mommy," he called, climbing into her lap before noticing the man at the table. "Hi," he said with a shy smile. Adrian's eyes widened, and for a moment, the world stopped moving. "He has your eyes," Adrian said softly, more to himself than to her. Isabella turned pale. "He's mine," she said quickly. "Only mine." But something had shifted in Adrian's gaze, and it wasn't curiosity, it was instinct. That night, Adrian searched through old photos of his father, looking for anything that could explain what he felt when he looked at Luca. He found a single photo, Julian with a young girl in front of a hotel, her eyes wide, innocent, terrified. Her face, it was her. "Isabella, what the hell?" he whispered, and that's when he made the call. "Dad," he said when Julian answered. "Did you ever know someone named Isabella? About 5 or 6 years ago?" Silence. Then the line cut. The next day, Adrian asked to speak with her alone. "Why didn't you tell me you knew my father?" he asked. Isabella's eyes filled with pain. "Because I didn't want you to see me as part of his story." He sat down slowly. "But I think you are." She shook her head. "He took everything from me, Adrian, and I don't even hate him. My hate that I still dream about what that night could have meant if he hadn't vanished." Adrian whispered, "What if I told you I don't want to be him? I just want to be part of your life." And Isabella cried. Later that night, Isabella wrote something in her journal. "The man who hurt me gave me a son, but the man he raised might be the one who helps me finally heal." If this story has touched you so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments and hit the like button, because sometimes love returns through the most unexpected doors, and when it does, it deserves to be told. Adrian invited her for a walk after closing time, and Isabella, against her instincts, said yes. They walked beneath the orange streetlights, silence thick but not uncomfortable. There's something about you, he said softly, like you're carrying a whole lifetime behind your eyes. Isabella stopped walking. I am, she whispered. He gently brushed her hair back. You don't have to tell me yet, but I'll wait. She looked at him wryly, looked tan for the first time. She didn't see Julian's son. She saw the man in front of her, and it terrified her. Adrian walked her to her door, standing close enough for her to feel his warmth, but not close enough to touch. You're shaking, he said. No, I'm not, she lied. He leaned in slowly, and for a second, their lips nearly met, but Isabella pulled back. I can't, she whispered. Why? He asked, visibly hurt. Because you're not. Just you, she said, trembling. You're a reminder of everything I've been trying to survive. He stepped back, respecting her boundaries. But the look in his eyes said he wasn't going anywhere. Luca's birthday arrived, and the cafe transformed into balloons, cupcakes, and the sound of children laughing. Adrian showed up with a gift wrapped in silver paper and Luca ran into his arms like they'd known each other forever. Isabella watched, her heart tightening as she saw how effortlessly Adrian became part of the boy's world. He looks at you like you're his hero, she said quietly. Adrian knelt beside Luca and whispered something that made him giggle. Maybe that's because I finally found someone worth showing up for, Adrian replied. Late that night, Isabella's phone rang and her heart nearly stopped when she saw the name, Julian. She didn't answer. But the next morning she received a letter at her door, sealed in black wax. It was short. I know. I want to meet the boy. Don't let my son get hurt because of your silence. Her hands shook, and fear twisted inside. Her like a knot, Julian was back. And if he came for Luca, she had no idea what he was capable of. Isabella agreed to meet Julian, but only in a public place, with Adrian unaware. He looked older, colder, but still carried the same dangerous calm. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because you vanished, she snapped. Because I was nothing to you. Julian leaned forward. And yet you raised my child. She clenched her fists. He's not your child. He's mine. Julian smiled faintly. Be careful, Isabella. I have lawyers. You have secrets. Her blood turned to ice. Adrian noticed the change in her distant eyes, the anxious glances. You're hiding something, he said gently. And I don't want to push, but I feel like it's about my father. Isabella said nothing. Did he hurt you? Adrian asked. She looked up, eyes full of tears, and whispered, no. He just disappeared after taking everything I didn't know how to protect. Adrian stepped back, stunned. And for the first time, he understood he was in love with the woman his father had destroyed. That night, Isabella told Adrian everything. Julian had seduced her, taken her innocence, and vanished before she could even understand what she'd given. She told him about Luca, about the nights she cried in silence, about the fear of telling the truth. Adrian sat in stunned silence, eyes wide, heartbreaking. So he's my brother, he asked softly. Isabella nodded. Half-brother, and if you want to walk away now, I'll understand. But Adrian didn't leave. He reached out and held her. You didn't choose this pain, but I'm choosing you. Julian summoned Adrian to his estate, his voice cold, his tone commanding. You knew? Adrian asked the moment he arrived. I suspected, Julian replied. She was just a moment, a mistake. Adrian's fists clenched. That mistake raised your child alone. She didn't ask for your money. She just asked to be left in peace. Julian laughed bitterly. You think you love her. You don't even know what love costs. But Adrian knew. He knew because he saw it every day in Isabella's eyes. Now, he was ready to fight. That night, Adrian posted a message to his own followers. Sometimes, the people we love come with a past we weren't ready for. But it's not their past that defines them, it's their strength to survive it. Isabella watched the video, tears in her eyes. He's not his father, she whispered. He's the man I wish I had met first. If you're following this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the right love comes after the wrong one walks away. Isabella wrote a letter for Luca to read one day. You were born from pain, but you gave me purpose. I may have been abandoned, but I never abandoned you. And one day, when you're old enough, I'll tell you everything. Not to hurt you, but to show you how love still found us. She placed the letter in a box with the compass necklace and a photo of Adrian holding Luca on his birthday, because the past would always be part of their story, but so would the man who chose to stay. Adrian took Isabella to a quiet vineyard outside the city, holding her hand the entire ride, his nerves hidden behind gentle smiles. He stopped beneath a tree lit by lanterns and pulled something from his pocket, not a ring, but a letter. I was going to propose, he said, but not while there's still fear in your eyes. She looked away, ashamed. It's not you I'm afraid of, she whispered. It's what loving someone cost. Me the first time. Adrian nodded, folding the letter. Then I'll wait until you believe love doesn't have to leave. And she cried because he meant it. Julian filed for paternity rights, sending Isabella into a spiral of fear and rage. He wants to force shared custody, her lawyer said. He never visited, never supported, but he has resources. The blood test will prove it. Adrian slammed his fist against the table. He had 5 years and never cared. Now he wants to ruin her peace. Isabella whispered. He doesn't want Luca, he wants control. And she was right, because some men don't chase love. They chase ownership of what they lost. Adrian offered to be the one to take Luca to the lab. He thought it would be easier that way. Isabella sat in the car, gripping the wheel, barely breathing as her son walked into that building unaware. He's 5, she whispered. He should be learning to tie his shoes, not proving his existence. Adrian returned an hour later, silent. I stayed with him the whole time, he said softly, and he smiled the entire time because he thought it was a game. But inside, Adrian had never felt more furious with his own blood. Julian appeared, in court wearing an expensive suit and an empty smile. Isabella stood in front of him with nothing but a child's drawing in her purse and fire in her chest. The judge listened to both sides, money on one side, memory on the other. He's not your project, Isabella said in a trembling voice. He's my son, not your second chance. Julian said nothing, but when Adrian stepped forward and offered to testify in her favor if it cost him his inheritance, the room froze. I choose her, he said, and I'll do it again, in every lifetime. After the hearing, Isabella sat in a small, park bench, unable to speak, her fingers buried in the pages of Luca's sketchbook. Adrian sat beside her, quiet. What if he wins? She asked finally. Adrian took her hand. Then we fight again. And again. Until Luca grows up knowing love fought louder than fear. She nodded slowly. I never wanted a war. He looked at her with soft certainty. Then let me be your peace. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep, so she knocked on Adrian's door, wearing only a robe in fear. He said nothing, just pulled her into his arms, resting her head against his chest. They didn't kiss, they didn't undress, they just held each other until the sun rose. And in that silence, something unspoken broke. Because sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with stillness that makes you feel safe. At breakfast, Luca stared up at Isabella and said, Why do I have your last name and not Daddy's? Isabella nearly dropped her cup. Because I gave you mine, she said gently. And I wanted you to have the name of someone who never left. Luca tilted his head. But Adrian's still here. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Yes, he is. Later, she found Adrian on the porch and whispered, He's starting to ask. Adrian pulled her close and said, Then maybe it's time I stop standing outside the door. Julian came unannounced, standing at her door with a smug calmness. You won, he said, but you should know something. He'll never stop being mine. Isabella stepped outside, closed the door behind her, and stood inches from him. You were there for one night, she said. I've been here every day for 5 years. That's the difference between blood and love. Julian looked at her one last time, maybe with regret, maybe not, and left without another word. That was the last time she ever saw him. That night, Adrian and Isabella uploaded one final update. Love isn't always clean, Adrian said. Sometimes, it's messy and painful and full of choices that hurt. Isabella took his hand, but it can also be safe, and healing, and beautiful again. And after everything, don't forget to like and subscribe if you've followed their story. Comment below, would you forgive the father or choose the son? Because sometimes, family isn't who made you. It's who stayed when no one else did. Adrian took her hand on a rainy evening and slipped a ring onto her finger, not gold but silver, etched with the words, You chose peace. This time, I won't ask, he said, because I already know your answer. Isabella looked at the boy asleep on the couch, at the man who waited 5 years to undo someone else's damage, and at the woman she had become. I'm not afraid anymore, she said. Then marry me, not to forget the past, but because we built something stronger than it. And she said yes. Isabella didn't want a big wedding, just something quiet, simple, and honest. So they married in the backyard of the cafe, with paper lanterns, second-hand fairy lights, and Luca holding the rings. Adrian whispered, You make everything feel like home. She smiled through her tears. And you make me feel like I deserve it. There were no crowds, no photographers, just laughter, vows, and a future rebuilt from the ruins. Even the rain waited until they kissed to fall, soft and warm, like blessing. 1 week later, over pancakes and chocolate milk, Luca asked, Will Adrian be my real dad now? The room went quiet. Isabella glanced at Adrian, who gently wiped syrup from the boy's chin. If you want me to be, Adrian said, then I already am. Luca nodded solemnly. Okay, then can I call you Dad today? Adrian's voice cracked. Yeah, I'd like that. Isabella turned away, smiling with her whole chest and wiping the tear that escaped before anyone noticed. A thick envelope arrived in the mail weeks later, with Julian's elegant handwriting on the front. Inside, a handwritten letter read, You were right. I couldn't love what I didn't understand, but you did. And that's why he'll grow up happy. It also included a signed legal document, Julian relinquishing all paternal claims to Luca. Isabella read it 3 times before she believed it. He let go, she whispered, and for the first time, the past didn't feel like a prison, just a chapter that had finally closed. One cold night, Luca developed a high fever that wouldn't break. Isabella rushed him to the hospital in panic, and Adrian never left her side. In the waiting room, she sobbed into Adrian's chest. I can't lose him. He's the only reason I survived. Adrian held her tight. He's going to be fine, He's strong like you. After hours of waiting, the doctor smiled. It's just a virus. He'll recover fully. Isabella broke down again, but this time, in gratitude. Some prayers aren't poetic, they're just whispered pleas. In sterile rooms at 2 a.m. Adrian woke one night, breathless from a dream where he saw Luca as a grown man, happy, whole, and calling him dad with pride. It felt real, he said, and it made everything we went through worth it. Isabella brushed his cheek. Maybe that was your heart telling you that you're already his father, not by blood, but by choice. He kissed her gently. Then I'll spend every day proving it, she whispered. You already do. The bookstore cafe was always Isabella's safe place. But one morning she unveiled a new sign above the door, Luca's Light. Customers applauded, but only Adrian understood what it really meant. Because he saved you, he said. And now this place will save others. She nodded. This is where I lost myself, and found everything I never expected. Adrian pulled her close and said, it's not just a cafe anymore, it's our beginning. Together, they recorded a final thank you for their viewers. 5 years ago, I was a scared girl who thought one night ruined her forever, Isabella said. But it didn't. It brought me my son. It brought me healing. And eventually, it brought me a man who rewrote everything. Adrian added, if you've been broken, lost, or left behind, don't close your heart forever. Sometimes, the love that saves you comes from the most unexpected place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it touched you, because everyone deserves a second chance at real love. They took Luca to the same beach where everything had once started with fear, with loss, but now, they return with laughter and footprints in the sand. This is where I let go of the past, Isabella whispered, and held on to the people who chose to stay. Adrian kissed her temple. Let's promise to always return here every year. Luca jumped into the water, shouting, we're a team now. And just like that, the place that once held pain, now held joy on memory healed. Isabella published a book titled What Came After the Storm. In it, she told a fictionalized version of her journey, an anonymous, raw, unfiltered story about survival, motherhood, and unexpected love. It became a bestseller. Adrian stood beside her at the launch, proud, silent, and in awe. It's beautiful, he said. So are you. She looked out at the crowd and whispered, this time, I'm not hiding. Because when you write your own ending, no one can take your voice again. On a quiet morning, Isabella woke up between two steady heartbeats, one from the man who chose her, and one from the boy she'd never stopped choosing. The light streamed through the curtains, soft and golden. Adrian stirred, kissed her shoulder, and whispered, still afraid. She smiled, only of how much I love this life. Luca called from the kitchen, asking for pancakes, and in that moment, with bare feet on the cold floor, and joy in her chest, she finally believed it. She wasn't the girl who'd been left behind anymore. She was the woman who had everything.